Good evening and welcome to this Bolton Council Corporate and External Issues Scrutiny Committee being held on Thursday the 11th of February 2021. The time is just after 6 p.m. and I am Councillor Richard Sylvester, the chair of this Scrutiny Committee for this municipal year at Bolton Town Hall. Behind me is our Festival Hall reception area in this historic building. I would like to welcome the members of the Scrutiny Committee, our Bolton councillors, our Bolton Council officers, and also to members of the public if you're watching this meeting live via the Bolton Council website or the recorded version on the Bolton Council YouTube channel. My Vice Chair is Councillor Sean Hornby. Our committee clerk this evening is Vicky Ridge, and you'll hear Vicky's voice throughout the meeting as I consult with her, and our technical officer is John Duckett. And John's role is to make sure that the meeting runs smoothly by moving the camera from speaker to speaker. But please do bear with us just in case there are any technical difficulties. To tonight's agenda, therefore, and item 1 is declarations of interest. Now, if any member has an interest, would you please unmute your microphone now and declare it? No declarations of interest have been made. So we go on to item 2, which is urgent business. Is there any urgent business, Vicky?
There's not, Chairman.
Item 3 is apologies for absence. Have we any apologies, Vicky?
I haven't received any apologies.
OK, so we go to item number 4, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. These have been sent out to members in advance of this meeting by email. These were the minutes on the 14th of December 2020, and there are 7 pages of minutes. And as usual, go through them page by page. Could I ask members to unmute if you have any comments or questions on the minutes? So we'll start on G1. G2, G3. We've got a question from Councillor Hayes, I think, on the minutes. Shall we go over to Councillor Hayes? Councillor Hayes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Question on page G6 about the police session that we had. It says in the minutes that we will be sent details of police officers in each area. I remember seeing some for Bolton South East, but I don't recall seeing any for Bolton West. Have they been sent, do we know?
OK, shall we ask our committee clerk to contact the police officers who sent that email out to the council, and to just double check if they can send us the contact details of the Bolton West officers. I thought they were on that list myself, but we'll double check that, Councillor Hayes, and if they're not on the list, we'll ask Vicky, our committee clerk, if they can be resent out again.
Thank you.
OK, thank you. So actually, that was on page G6. Let's go back a few pages. We're to G4 and then G5. Anything further on G6 and then G7. So if members are happy with those, could I ask a member to unmute and move the minutes as a correct record?
Move, Chair.
Thank you. Is there a seconder, please?
Second, Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you. And could members just unmute their microphones and say aye if they accept the minutes?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Thank you very much. Those minutes have been accepted. So therefore we go on to item number 5, which is the proposed, well, it is the committee work programme for 2020-21. Now this evening we've got a COVID-19 and council finances update, which is a standing item. a council budget and reserves report, and then we've got a communications and marketing presentation, which includes Big Up Bolton. Now, on our committee work programme, we also have a Cube Fire and Council's, the role and response of the council in the Cube Fire. Now, that will be coming to a special joint scrutiny committee meeting with place scrutiny on Tuesday the 2nd of March. An invite has been sent out by Vicky to all members to attend that meeting, so please accept that into your diaries. Also at that meeting, the special scrutiny will have an update from Andy Bolton on the nitrous oxide canister issue and the knife crime issue that was asked for at the last scrutiny committee meeting. So that will come to this special joint scrutiny. And then we're going to have a report from a deputy leader decision on Bank Street. That was a deputy leader meeting, which was an urgent meeting. So we're going to have a report about that and the decision taken at that meeting at the special scrutiny committee. In April, at our next meeting, we'll have neighbourhood management, narrowing the gap, and we'll also have a report on a council motion from March 2019 about the Greater Manchester Pension Fund, and the council's motion was to disinvest from fossil fuel companies and any involved in the exploration of coal and unconventional oil or gas. And that was a motion which the council passed to ask the Greater Manchester Pension Fund to disinvest in those types of activities. So we're going to have a report on that at our April meeting. Is there anything else which you wish to mention, Vicky, on the committee work programme?
No, thank you, Chair. I think you've covered everything.
OK, so I'll open it up to if any members have any questions or comments on the committee work programme. Just unmute now if you wish to ask a question. So I think everybody's fine with that. So please remember to accept the invite to the special joint scrutiny, which will take place on the 2nd of March. So we'll go now to item 6 on our agenda, which is a COVID-19 and finances update. This is a standing item on our agenda, and our Borough Treasurer, Sue Johnson, who is our Deputy Chief Executive, will take us through this report. I can see Sue standing by on my monitor, so let's go over to Sue.
Thank you, Chair. And John, I believe you're bringing up the presentation that's been circulated to members. Brilliant, thank you, John. So good evening, councillors. So as at the end of January, we have received the £26.7 million worth of emergency government funding, and we are currently estimating that the full effect of the direct cost of COVID, the loss of income, and the delay in achieving the cut savings that were required to balance the budget, currently estimated at £34.1 million at the end of January. The next slide, please. Thank you. So in terms of the additional costs, they are outlined there for members. And these are the direct costs incurred by the council that the emergency funding will help to support. But on top of that, we've also received some specific grants. So as an example, there's £5 million worth of costs that adults and children's social care have incurred, and they're funded by Infection Control Grant. Costs are spread across the council. As you would expect, the majority is within our direct social care settings, and then we've currently got about just under £6 million worth of cuts that we are cash flowing as we achieve those towards the end of the financial year. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in terms of income loss, this is actually a greater strain on our budget. Members are well aware that we were receiving about £6 million worth of airport dividend, 4.1 million of which was built into our budget on a permanent basis. We've also seen the reduction in business rates income and council tax income, and also the sales fees and charges income has come down, but what we have most recently received off the government is notification that we'll get £1.4 million worth of grant to help compensate for that. So what we are expecting is to have to use about £5 million worth of our reserves to balance the budget from a cash perspective. And as I've explained to members before, the impact on the business rates and council tax, that is a cash issue in the current year. It becomes a budget impact in the year after. But what we do know is that, is that the government will allow us to spread that impact, now about £9 million, we think, by the end of the financial year, over the 3 years, which certainly will help us from a budget perspective. So the final slide, please, John. And so for completeness, as I mentioned, we're also getting some other specific grants. Now, the first one has been particularly beneficial to all the businesses within Bolton. A significant amount of money under the government scheme. It's the government scheme. It's administered by our business rates department. A lot of money has gone out to support local businesses. And then on top of that, we've also had a list of specific grants there to help us manage track and trace, outbreak management, rapid testing, etc. And that money is being utilised for the benefits of our residents. So I'll finish there and hand back to yourself, Chair, for any questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Sue. And we do have a couple of questions. We're going to go over firstly to Councillor Akhtar Zaman, who wishes to ask a question. So over to you, Councillor Zaman.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just looking at this presentation and I'm trying to understand the impact, really, the financial impact. So if you could help on this. So I'm looking at the first slide and it says full year effect of costs, etc. would be 34.1 million at the end of January 2021. Then I go to the next slide and it says additional cost of 12.2 million, and then there's a list underneath that. So all these are costs, I assume, and if you pull all these together, they come to something like 24 million pounds. And then on the next slide, income losses of 21.9 million pounds. So what I'm trying to understand is the financial impact. Is it, because if you add these two figures together, 24 million and then 21.9 million, it comes to something like 46 million pounds. So am I missing something here, or am I looking at these figures in a different way?
Yeah, of course I can, Councillor Zaman. I mean, if I try and summarise it, we've had direct costs for about 6.4 million, so that's additional bills to pay. We've had about 21.9 million of a loss of income, a direct loss of income. That gets us to about just over 28 million. But on top of that, there's 5.8 million pounds worth of cuts that, because of the impact of COVID, it's just slowed the business of the council down. So it's an impact from a cash perspective because we're having to use our own cash reserves to balance the budget as we get the savings out. But clearly we include this. What we've done is replicated for members what we're putting on the return from HCLG, just so we've got the transparency of the information we're putting in. So we include it because it is an impact on our finances. But I'm very happy to send you a different, maybe a summarised version, if that's helpful, just to explain the figures. I can send that over to you.
Well, no, sorry if I may, Chair. I just want to know the total impact on the council. Is it 36 million pounds? Or is it more than that? And from these slides, I'm getting the impression that it's a lot more than 36 million pounds. Okay. Is that right?
So it is 28.3 million direct costs and loss of income, plus up to 5.8 million cash flow impact because the savings have been delayed. And set against that, we've had the direct emergency government funding of 26.7 million, plus the 1.4 million grant to look after the loss of sales. Now, this is the position we've estimated as at the end of January. New monthly returns into MHCLG, and then obviously at our next scrutiny meeting, I'll be able to give a further update on the full year-end position.
So if I may, Chair, am I right to assume that the COVID-related cost is likely to increase given that the situation is not getting any better? Is that a fair assessment?
We don't know yet. We don't know yet. This is our estimate as at the end of January. We understand that the full year impact of the business rates and council tax will increase. We're estimating it to be about £9 million. In terms of the additional costs that we face, I think that we just need to see what the next couple of months brings, because obviously we're still in the lockdown. The rates are still relatively high, although reducing. Obviously vaccination is rolling out, which is a positive. So we're nearly at the end of the financial year, of course, but we just need to keep an eye on figures. So I'll be able to give a better update and better answer to that question at the next scrutiny meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sue, and thank you, Councillor Zaman. We're now going to go over to Councillor Roger Hayes, who wishes to ask a question or questions. Councillor Hayes.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a question, and a fairly simple one, I suspect. The housing cost of 0.3 million, is that all directly to the council, or is there some additional costs to Bolton at Home and the other social housing providers? And if so, are they getting any grants from the government, or are we expected to pass over to them?
So they will be the direct costs that have come through to the council. In terms, I mean, obviously we're working very closely with all our partner organisations because it is such a critical issue at the moment. So what I will do is I will ask a question of support and any financial support for our partners, and I'll provide that answer through Vicky to members of the committee.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Sue. And now we're going to go over to Councillor Nick Peel, who has a question or questions. So, Councillor Peel, please.
Thanks, Chair. Sue, sorry, following the same line as Councillor Zaman. So I'm trying to. It isn't easy to follow this. Direct costs of 6.4 million plus loss of income 21.9. That's 28 million. Then you said plus 5.8 million, which is the cash flow impact in the current financial year, which that brings the grand source of 34 million. But I thought when you said a cash flow impact, are we talking about? I mean, the other way that this has been described in presentations in the past is use of reserves in order to deal with the cuts that could not come out, the planned cuts that could not come out within this financial year. And I thought that figure was more around 10 million.
Okay. Okay.
I will come back to you. Thanks.
Yeah, so you're right that figure has been reducing as I've been giving these presentations. We started off with a higher figure, but obviously we've been working extremely hard in either delivering the cuts that were expected or finding alternatives that can be achieved. So you're absolutely right, it was a higher figure, it's starting to come down, hence that cash flow money is needed as we get them out.
Okay, so I'm just waiting for it to go live. So I'm with you up to that point then.
Great.
So that came to 34 million, minus approximately 27 million from the government that you're saying was directly related to that 34 million. So I work out there then that the net loss for the council is 7 million based on these figures. So based on that, Sue, are you saying that the cuts that are planned for the next financial year of 35 million, had COVID never ever happened, those cuts would be in the region of 28 million? Because that's 35 minus the COVID cost deficit of 7. I don't think we are saying that. So this is where I think members are still a bit in the dark.
Okay. Yeah. So in terms of the budget impact into next financial year, that currently sits at about 9.3 million, and there's 3 main impacts on that. The first one is the loss of business rates and council tax income, because as I explained, it becomes a budget issue in the second year, so not this year, the year after. By the end of the year, we estimate in total across those 2 sources of income that to be a loss of about £9 million. We can spread it over 3 years, so that's 3 million loss of budget into next year. On top of that, we've got the airport dividend that we will no longer receive for a number of years. And whilst we were receiving just over £6 million a year cash, we had 4.1 million built into our budgets. So that is reflected in the cuts target for next year. And then the final amount is about 2.2 million, which across the council we estimate is costs and loss of income on a longer term basis. And what we have to do is adjust our budgets accordingly. So in total, the cuts target that we are facing for next year is increased by 9.3 million because of the impact of COVID.
Thanks. That's quite useful, and because obviously we need to understand the following year's costs. So, according to my figures, then, so I got to the point whereby we're looking at 35 million out of the budget for next financial year. If let's take away that 7 million in-year COVID deficit that I got to, that would have meant the cuts next year would have been 28 million. But now we've got to take off the 9 million that you've just described, the impact into next year you described that as. So would it be fair to say that instead of looking at cuts of 35 million next Wednesday, we would then be looking at cuts of 19 million? That's where my figures get. So I'll take you through that. So we've got 35 million, yeah, minus the 7 million, what I've described as our deficit in year. So that's 34 minus 27, yeah, plus, sorry, also minus 9 million. So by my reckoning, the cuts would have been 19 million next financial year, and we are actually 16 million as a direct result of COVID costs.
Yeah, not quite, because the in-year deficit in this year will be addressed in this financial year. We will have got out that remaining £5.8 million by the end of this year, because we have to have balanced our books. So that will have been achieved. So it's the, what did I say it was? The £9 million, £9.3 million is the ongoing impact into next financial year. So the figure of cuts for the Budget Council next week has been increased by 9.3 million because of the impact of COVID. Anything in this financial year, a lot of it is one-off, and that's what the emergency funding has been dealing with. Ongoing is the 9.3. The failure, or the delay in getting that final 5.8 million of cuts out will have been addressed by the 31st of March, so it doesn't then become an issue into next financial year. The reports are going through, the final reports are going through, and those cuts are coming out in this financial year. That helps.
Yeah, it does. I just wait for it to go live. I understand the way you're saying it. It seems to me though it's just an alternative way of saying it. So we've got 9.3 million next year. However, we have to remember that 5.8 million of reserves is being used this year to cash flow. Therefore, next year's budget we would have had that 6 million to play around with to reduce the impact. So it still does add up to around 16 million. Whichever way you look at it, it still comes back to that 16 million COVID cost figure.
I'll just come back, Chair. So I think, yeah, you're right, we probably use more cash flow money in this financial year than we would have done. That's correct. What that would have meant into next financial year, I mean, ultimately, it would have made our cash flow position much more comfortable. We're a greater step away from a Section 114 notice. If the question is, would it have meant we could have deferred cuts? I genuinely don't know the answer to that. If it had have done, it would have certainly been around the margins. It would not have made a significant difference, and it wouldn't have changed the overall total. All it would have done is possibly move a couple of £1 million from year 1 to year 2, but it wouldn't, because it's one-off money, it's not a permanent solution, so it wouldn't have changed the overall total. What it may have done is change the split a tiny bit between the 2 financial years.
Final comeback, Chair. Jousting with the Borough Treasurer is never an easy task. I think we're going to have to disagree a little bit on our interpretation here. The point I'm getting at, and I think I'm understanding this correct, and I think members are following me on this, is we have 35 million of cuts for budget next Wednesday. I make it, to be honest, because we have to include the money from reserves we're using this year. We're using this year, it would have been available next year. So we have to include that. So I make that 35 million split between 16 million as a direct result of cost, additional cost not covered as a result of COVID. The actual budget we would have been looking at on Wednesday would have been around about 19 million. Now there might be things to disagree on the margins, and my point is that this is 16 million. We're not the only council. This is 16 million where Bolton's been let down by the government, who said they'll do everything they can to protect councils, and no council will face additional COVID financial problems. Now, clearly they only helped out in some ways, but not in all ways. I don't obviously expect you to come back, Borough Treasurer, to answer, what is a fundamental political point, but I think I understand the situation, that it's not quite 50-50, but there's just under 50% that would not have existed had things been very, very different 12 months ago. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Peel. Now, no other members have indicated to speak on this COVID-19 and finances update, so we'll therefore go to item 7 on our agenda, which is the budget report for 2021-2022, and this relates to the budget recommendation by the Cabinet taken on the 8th of February for the next budget council meeting next week. So again, our Borough Treasurer Sue Johnson will take us through this budget report. So over to you again, Sue.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So as part of our budget setting process each year, we had the Cabinet meeting on Monday, where Cabinet received 3 reports which are presented to scrutiny this evening. One gives proposals around our revenue budget, and at the meeting on Monday, Cabinet indicated their intentions around the budget, around the council tax for next year, and also their proposals. There was an additional £3 million reduction in costs, and they indicated how they wish to amend the budget options to reflect that £3 million. There was also, for completeness, our Treasury Management Strategy Report for the next financial year and our capital programme. I'll pass back to yourself, Chair, just in case members have any comments or questions to make on those budget proposals, which will go through to full council next Wednesday evening.
Thank you for that, Sue, and I'll open it up for any questions or comments on this budget report. No members have indicated in the chat box. If you do wish to ask a question, just unmute now. And no member is unmuted, so therefore we will go to item 8 on our agenda, which is our presentation on communications and marketing during COVID-19, which also includes Big Up Bolton. And to take us through this presentation is Emily Brooke, and is Nicola Littlewood also taking us through this as well?
Yes, Chair.
Great. Well, over to you, Emily. Thank you.
Just waiting to go live. Good evening, everyone. So my name is Emily Brooke, and I'm the Assistant Director for Strategy and Partnerships at the Council. And this evening we were asked to prepare a presentation on marketing, including the Big Up Bolton workstream of the Bolton 2030 vision. And with the Chair's prior approval, we've offered to do a slightly expanded presentation to also give a bit of an overview of communications during COVID-19. So this evening, our excellent Council Marketing and Communications Manager, Nicola, will be presenting a briefing in 2 parts. The first part of the presentation will give an overview of our current system-wide approach to communications during COVID-19. Alongside the huge challenges that the Council and our partners have risen to in supporting our residents during the pandemic, COVID-19 has also presented a need for an extraordinary communications response. Every change to guidance and restrictions and every decision that we take to provide support needs to be communicated in a way that is clear, timely and accurate. So to meet this challenge, communications colleagues from across partner organisations in Bolton have come together in the Bolton Communications Cell, which Nicola chairs, to make sure that people are getting the most useful information possible in the right time and in the right format. So we thought it would be useful for Scrutiny to hear a bit about the current priorities of that work this evening. The second part of the presentation will start to look to marketing and also to the future post-pandemic. At the start of the pandemic, some of the work on Big Up Bolton was paused temporarily because due to the restrictions that were in place, and for quite obvious reasons, it wasn't the right time to be encouraging people to come and experience our borough. We know that as we start to emerge from some of the COVID-19 restrictions, it's going to be hugely important to promote Bolton as a place and support our local economy across all parts of our borough. So we're going to be standing this work back up now, as it will play an important role in supporting our recovery. Nicola will give you an overview of why we're doing the Big Up Bolton work, its outcomes and the form that it will take. So with that in mind, I'll hand over to Nicola, who will take you through this evening's presentation, after which we'll be more than happy to take any questions that you have.
Good evening. John, I think that you're bringing up the presentation. Okay, thank you. As Emily has explained, the presentation is in 2 parts this evening, and it is really to take you through the Bolton story of the communications and marketing through COVID-19. If we can go to the first slide, please. So if we could just go back to the overarching plan, John, thank you. So just as Emily said, there was a response made as COVID arrived into Bolton, which was the 3rd of March. That was the first case. We very much developed a system response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It is across key partner organisations. If we could just go back again, John, sorry. So it was in response to the key partner organisations came together. We do have 14 different partners on our Bolton Comms cell. We do meet once a week and we talk through those very key thematic areas of vaccination, testing, mental health. We've got quite an extensive list. We are joined by partners from Greater Manchester Police, the CCG, the FT and all our voluntary sectors as well. So we have got a joint plan. And it is during this current lockdown period that we're working very hard as a partnership to update all of our residents, businesses and key stakeholders. We are trying to shape the transition to post-lockdown. We are awaiting the lockdown easing plan on the 22nd, and we've started some work around that in terms of what we're anticipating. We've got an early heads up today just about those topic areas. So the linked activity is planned for the council and for partner organisations, and what we like to do with that is actually look at the calendar. So this week as an example, it's National Apprenticeship Week. We really want to support our young people with that. So there is a lot of activity around core activity for those thematic areas, but then some additionality. As I've said, we do focus on sector areas, target audiences, and we really do try to not do one size fits all, because some of the intelligence and data that we've got is across geographic areas, it's about different communities, and we do really try to make the communications work very hard. If we go to the next slide, please, John. So just the principles we've got around what we work to. So yes, absolutely, that strong partnership, everybody contributing, working together right across the system. All of our activities, particularly about how communications is linking with engagement. They're insight led. We go from an evidence-based piece, but it's appropriately delivered and targeted. So the work that we're doing with Bolton at home and colleagues in the VCSE, it means that we are actually going door to door within communities. So there is a very clear programme of work that we do push out to ensure that we are able to talk to people. That is really to support behaviour change across the population, and we've got some very difficult messages, and I think that there is a lot of saturation, and what we want to do is get those messages very, very clearly put forward, so it gives people that confidence to dispel the misinformation that's around, and some of the perceptions that communities may have around anything regarding COVID. And it's really to recognise the unequal impacts of COVID-19 in key groups too. We know that with the evidence that's coming through, that actually some of our key groups need further communication, and we need to recognise that. So we've got an approach of where we've set out 6 core objectives, and that really forms the basis for message shaping that we have right across the system. We look at the different scenarios that come in and the different appropriate responses that we make, and it's done in a very timely manner. As we know, as we've gone on the journey of COVID, we know that that it changes day to day, that we have to get things out very, very quickly, and we are very responsive to that right across. The activity is also linked to the council's 10-point response plan, and therefore we've got that full circle of actually how activity is linking back. John, if we can go to the next slide, please. So if we move into those 6 core objectives, and it was just to talk you through how the group comes together. So if we start with the top one, we want to really reassure that our residents in the Bolton community, via regular clear communications and engagement via system partners, ensure they know where to go and how to ask for help. We have a humanitarian hub. We get a lot of calls in for that. So, and we work right across the system to ensure that we are supporting our communities. On objective 2, this is about staying safe by providing clear guidance about what actions people need to take to protect themselves, others and the wider community. And we really want to instill a sense of community pride and belonging. There is so much great work going on there within communities, from individuals, from organisations, from groups, and people really helping each other. And that's all part of that Team Bolton. And our greatest strength is our people. Objective 3, we're going to work with businesses and the self-employed. We want to give really clear guidance. We have business Bolton communications that go out all the time. We've had 10 grant schemes live at one time, and it is really about how we access that economic support and about how we protect and support those businesses moving forward and the wider community. So if we move to objective 4, please, John, on the next slide. We want to ensure that all of our communities understand how they can get help and the effort that they need to take to reduce the virus spread, and that responsibility and the importance of doing so. Objective 5 is about the coherent messaging. We have got priority hotspots in terms of our transmission rates. We have got groups and communities, and we want to ensure they get the right message, but actually, as Emily said, to the right audience and in the right way. And that way, sometimes it's very much about that, you know, word of mouth and that trusted engagement that we do have on the doorstep. And then objective 6 is something where we want to celebrate and profile lots and lots of positive news stories, events in the borough to support the vision of the 2030 for an active, connected and prosperous town. And we have some amazing stories which we have recently profiled about all of the community work that is going on right across the borough. So those are the 6 core objectives. If we move to the next slide, John, what that actually shows us is a number of priorities. So besides the thematic work that we've got going on, we do Thursday is changeover day, and we do that for a number of reasons, that we can get messages out just prior to the weekend and really try and saturate some of our channels right across the system. So we've just done changeover today. Last week was all about learning and education, and that was to really support around homeschooling. You will not see some of the communications because it goes directly into some of our channels and networks. But this, from today, we've changed to business and money. We know that there's a lot of intelligence and data coming around workplaces. We have quite a number of workplaces that are still open, and people are operating. We support that around how people can stay safe within those workplaces, and actually how people can shop local, stay local, and stay safe while they're out and about. The other aspect of this is, again, with the data and intelligence we have, is about that support around money and people having access to understand and not to look at borrowing money. There is evidence coming through about you know, fuel poverty and, you know, people's difficulty with the financial circumstances they find themselves in. So when we move to the week after, just to give you an update on what we're focusing on, we've got a really brilliant piece of work going out from next week, and that is all about our young people and how our young people are coping with COVID-19. So we're working with quite a number of teams across the system, and they're going to show us from a very early age, so this is 4 years to 24 years, on all the work that they've been doing to support each other. So that's our focus for next week. As we move into week 6, which is from the 25th of February, the lockdown easing plan will have come in. And we will be obviously very heavy on comms following that to help and support all of our audiences, all of our key sector areas, and have a look at what that's showing us. So that's kind of our plan for the next few weeks, and we constantly refresh that plan to look at actually what's in. As we move into the next slide, please. So running alongside that, what we do have is, as Emily said, we started a piece of work in 2019, which was actually looking to refresh the Bolton brand and just sort of testing where we were, because it was first introduced in 2006. And, you know, it stood its test of time, but we've got the Bolton mark, we've got all the colours. But actually what we wanted to do was to test that out across. So this is about connecting the people and place again, and it really is to make Bolton and the whole of the borough an active, connected, prosperous place where people want to live, work, study, invest and visit. And it really is to create almost a shared narrative with our partners. So if I just talk through, John, if you could go to the next slide, please. So just in terms of that background and strategy, and to explain where it sits on a structure, the Vision Action Group identified the need to establish a strong, consistent and distinctive place brand. And there is a thematic group that fits in and reports to the ACP board. For Big Up Bolton, it's a thematic group, and it's there to create sustainable narrative with all of Bolton's stakeholders for selling and telling the story. We have quite a number of externals and external businesses that actually sit on that group and have helped shape the work. So we have been developing a core plan for Bolton, and what sits under that is the 5 themes of live, works, visit, study and invest. And back in 2019, we did carry out the very big perception campaign about I Love Bolton. So we asked everybody in Bolton, what do they love about Bolton? Everybody wrote to us. We had the great big bees around the town centre, in our events, in our shopping centres. They went out to schools, they were in our libraries, and it did a roadshow, and we did that for 2 months because we wanted to get some really extensive market research in. That initial narrative, we've written all of that up. That's in a strategy document now. And actually what that showed us was actually all of the similarities, and our position hadn't changed that much from 2006. You know, the biggest attribute that we've got is all around our people, that we are so friendly, that we've got a really good diverse community, that we're very welcoming, we're very accessible, you know, that we have a beautiful countryside, and we are very loyal, with a great strong sense of where Bolton's come from and where it's going. And I think if we look at actually, you know, some of the work that's come through and some of the comments that we've had, it really does relate to, you know, our voluntary sector, our strong voluntary sector. And it relates to our history and heritage, our arts, culture, you know, events, attractions. So we've got a very good position statement in terms of what our attributes are. So if we go to the next slide. So the creative approach, moving on from actually, you know, you always need to develop a place brand over a period of time. So with all the research that we carried out, we developed a brand mark, and this is Bolton, and it's a very bold brand mark to explain to people that yes, it is about Bolton. It's that Bolton narrative. The I Love Bolton because it was a campaign of its time, and we can introduce that at different periods to test things out and to actually talk to people about, you know, particular types, with living here, working here, whatever. As we move forward, we've got a range of materials, including a website about This Is Bolton, and what we wanted was to people give their personal stories about why they love Bolton. So on there, I know Darren's left us, but continues to obviously be a big part of Bolton. But you know, lots of people, hundreds of people, gave really good accounts of actually why they love Bolton so much, and that was very important in terms of the story that we're trying to bring together. So if we go to the next slide, please, John. So all about people and place. So the analysis of the I Love Bolton campaign demonstrated that there were 3 really big words that came out with any brand. There's a brand essence. So the brand essence is all about the family. That position hasn't changed. But then when we look at the brand values, the brand values are very much previously they've been open, colourful, sound. We're changing that because of what the narrative now tells us. We're changing it to bold, bright and brilliant, and it can really be applied across all the themes. There's lots and lots of evidence placed there about Bolton of the past, currently, and our aspirations for the future, and those aspirations as well, and about that we've got really bright communities and we've got some brilliant work going on. And again, lots and lots of detail on that. So the survey responses constantly cited Bolton's people, their warmth and their friendliness as its greatest asset, and that's really important as we begin to come out into recovery and about generating that civic pride, and that people feel very connected to the place. So key partners again have come together to create that shared Bolton narrative, and we want people to be proud to tell the Bolton story and be really proud to be a Boltonian. So just in terms of some of the timings now, our next phase is during March. We've got virtual workshops, and that is to take the next step forward about defining the USPs. You know, so that narrative again about live, work, visit, study and invest. It is led by key individuals, plus we are doing a Pacific workshop with the young people and the Youth Council, and we're going to do that after we've got the findings from all 5 to be able to do a half-a-day session with them and to talk through actually does that resonate. They are the next generation to come through, so we've got all of that in place. In April, we will start to introduce that brand to support recovery and reposition Bolton. During the next few months after that, the development of the campaigns and timetabled accordingly as to what is coming out and where we are in terms of the COVID journey. And then as we move into summer and autumn, the rollout of campaigns, events, and really promoting that SweepPad, bringing our communities back together. Throughout all of the above, we will absolutely use all our digital assets and engage with all of our audience and really run that parallel to all of the other work that we are doing. And if we can go to the next slide, please, John. So this is just the Bolton brand framework, and what we've got with the Bolton brand framework is any brand has a framework, and Bolton is the hero of the brand. We've split it into our population, our residents, our businesses, our investors, but actually, what does it mean for our visitors? What does it mean for people coming in? So we split that across two particular areas. And then what we've got is that shared story about the place. We've got a list of products, and we've got a section on our audiences, and then how we're going to really start to work up our campaigns. One size does not fit all with this, so we need to be really clear about who we're targeting and actually what that's going to deliver on those key outcomes. So that the framework just gives you a sense of actually how we start to systematically work through with the marketing of the place. Again, working with all of our partners to really engage and take Bolton forward and put Bolton on the map and make people feel very, very connected to the place itself. And that's the end of the presentation.
Thank you very much, Nicola and Emily. And I'm going to open this up now for questions. And first of all, we're going to go over to Councillor Madeline Murray, who's indicated that she has a question for you. So could we go over to Councillor Murray, please?
Thank you, Chair. I could be a bit early. Thank you, Chair, anyway. It's been two brilliant presentations, I have to say, and being a Bolton lass myself, I am proud of being a Boltonian, and I hope you thank all the staff for pulling all the stops out in this really hard time. But I don't want to be negative, because they are really positive presentations. So maybe the question is for the Chief, because at the back of my mind, and I've been fiddling about while I've been listening to you, that on page 21 of the previous item on the budget, we're actually going to lose basically 2 members of staff, well, 4 altogether, but two of them already vacant. Would this have an effect at all upon the work you're doing? Because there is absolutely loads of stuff that you've got in your presentation, and I'm just a bit worried, have you got enough staff if that budget goes through? I'm just really worried for you. Cheers, thanks. Sorry.
Chief Executive, you're live now.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your question, Councillor Murray. The answer is we'd always like more staff, and you know the context as outlined previously about the challenges we have around the budget. But I genuinely believe in the way that both Emily and Nicola have described the work that's been undertaken so far. This is not just about the council, this is about partnership. So it is about other partners, whether it be the university, whether it be Warburton's, whether it be other commercial partners, whether it be other local partners in terms of the voluntary sector, who are working with us to create some of the kind of materials and some of the messaging and some of the stories that have been described. So yes, we'd always like more staff, but I'm confident in terms of the team with Emily and Nicola that we can lead the progression and the work that's been outlined here in a way that's been described. Back to you, Chair.
I'm glad about that then. If you're happy about it, that's okay with me.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Murray. Thank you, Chief. And could I ask if any other members have any questions at all? I understand we're joined as well by Councillor Adia, who's dialed into the meeting. So if anybody has any questions, we've got a question now from Councillor Peel. So if we could go over to Councillor Peel, please.
Thanks, Chair. I listened to the presentation with great interest, and I wasn't going to. There wasn't anything I felt that I needed to ask, but I looked in the chat box and saw nobody indicated, and I just thought that the moment shouldn't go by without us saying thanks for the work that you're doing. It is something that's massively dear to members' hearts. Big up Bolton, despite our political differences. I was talking to the leader the other day, and I said I think 90% of the stuff we agree on local matters, and we all have the best interests of our borough at heart. So I think it's an incredibly important piece of work to do. Reputation of the borough, using our assets, the biggest asset we have is our people, and bringing all this together into a strategy to brag about our borough and to put a spotlight on it is something that we should be doing all the time. I think it's bread and butter stuff for our council, and obviously in partnership with our partners, and the financial rewards from that, from having a good reputation, as a place to work in, to invest in, are huge in the future. There's other towns that have done this with great success, and Bolton has had great success in the past, and long may that continue. So thanks to Nicola and Emily again. Welcome to Bolton, and thank you for everything that you're doing, and let's hope that this campaign has a great success.
Thank you very much, Councillor Peel, and there are no further questions. So could I also echo what Councillor Peel has just said as chair of this committee? Thank you very much for the presentation. I thought it was absolutely excellent. There's a lot of good work that goes on, some fantastic work that goes on behind the scenes, which us as councillors sometimes don't hear about, and the public may not hear about either. But it's presentations like this which bring it out into the open. And thank you very much for the work you're doing during this COVID-19 pandemic as well. So thank you again, Nicola and Emily. And again, Emily, welcome to Bolton Council.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
So with that, we'll go to item 9A, which is members' questions. And 2 questions were submitted, one from myself and one from Councillor Hayes. But we'll go over to Councillor Hayes first for his question. And we received an answer to his question earlier this afternoon by email.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It was basically about a question I got from a parent who was concerned that their children, having missed a lot of education this year, they would lose another day for the local elections, and why were we using schools? I know some of the answer beforehand, but I anticipate a lot of other members will probably get the same question near the elections, and I thought it would be useful, not just that members should have a copy, but the communications people might decide it might be helpful to put something out to explain why we're having to use schools as polling stations.
Okay, and were you got the answer, Councillor Hayes, earlier today? Have you seen the answer?
I have seen the answer. Yeah. It's very similar to the answer that the parent who approached me had got from Stephen Blythe previously, which I think is a perfectly reasonable answer. So I say I think it's something that needs to be a little bit more publicised.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hayes. There was also a question from myself, which has been answered. This was on an issue to do with a press statement which was released by the council regarding a ward issue in the ward which I represent. However, ward councillors were not informed of the contents when the press statement was released to the press, which I was disappointed about. I'm also a little bit disappointed with the answer which I've received, because the answer relates to press releases, and press releases are copied to all councillors, but this was a press statement. It was different to a press release, and as a ward councillor, I didn't know anything about it, and it wasn't sent to all of the members of the council. So my question really was to the leader, if he would commit in future, if it's a ward issue and a press statement is being released on a ward issue, if he would commit to for officers to inform ward members of the contents of the press statement, the information which is being sent to the press, so that ward members aren't kept in the dark when such a statement is being released, because I didn't know about the contents of the information which was released. So I just wanted to ask the leader that question, and I can see that the leader is going to join us now. So over to yourself, leader.
Thank you very much, Chair. I don't see a problem with that, and apologies for the confusion there. Yeah, if a press statement is going to be set out, then I don't see any reason why ward members should not be informed. So I'm happy to put that to the communications team as a recommendation. As has been said before, a lot of these are very timely. Some of them have to be addressed with urgency. So I think an email going out, we can't guarantee that ward members will have time to read it and come back to us, but we'll make sure that contact is made and an email goes out to give them prior notice of it. Yeah.
Yes, and
I'm glad to see that I'm glad to see that you were doing your emails, Councillor Sylvester, because when I look back at the correspondence, you emailed me at 10 to 1 in the morning on Christmas Eve, and that is commitment, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Greenhouse. As you know, I'm a very committed councillor, and I do my casework thoroughly. But yes, and I'm very happy with the answer you've given. So thank you very much for that. So we'll go now to members' business, which is part B of members' business. Now, this relates to extracts of decisions arising from the minutes of other meetings relevant to the remit of this committee. And these relate to Cabinet minutes on the 21st of December 2020, the 11th of January 2021, and the 8th of February 2021, and also to Executive Cabinet Member Leader's Portfolio held on the 16th of December 2020 and the 12th of January 2021. Has any member got any questions relating to any of those minutes at all? If you have, just unmute and let me know. I think I can take it that members are happy with all of those minutes of those meetings. So that brings us to the end of this Scrutiny Committee for this evening. So I would like to firstly thank our council officers for presenting to us this evening and answering our questions, to our councillors for attending, and to Vicky, our committee clerk, for organising this meeting, along with John Duckett, our technical officer, and to the public if you're watching at home or on the YouTube channel, the Bolton Council's YouTube channel, the recorded version. So with that, good evening. Our next committee meeting is a joint committee meeting with the Place Scrutiny, and that will be held on Tuesday, the 2nd of March. So hope to see you then. To members, all the best until then. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening.
Thank you, Chair.
Evening, everybody.
Thank you.